We live in an age of unprecedented sound, yet our greatest struggle is not the noise outside our windows, but the storm inside our skulls. According to the great master Ibn Arabi, the human mind is a restless traveler when it is left without a destination. It does not rest, it wanders into the wilderness of the past and the fog of the future. Think of your own life. You'll finish a long day of work. You dim the lights, the world finally falls silent, but as soon as your head hits the pillow, the inner orator begins its monologue. It replays arguments, rehearses meetings, and whispers fears. This is the paradox even in a silent room. The voice inside is louder than everything outside a burn. Arabi wrote in Futuhat al-Makkiyah, "When the mind is left to itself, it becomes a toy of the ego." What does it mean to be a toy? It means to have no agency. When your mind is not anchored to a higher truth, it becomes the playground for the bra. Nafs, the ego, thrives on turbulence. It feeds on anger to feel powerful, and worry to feel prepared. To the ego, silence is death. This is why it creates noise, to prove it is still alive. Until the mind is bound to the remembrance of the truth, it will remain a person's greatest enemy. The greatest mistake we make is trying to fight the mind with the mind. If you are angry, thinking "I should not be angry" only adds another layer of noise. Ibn Arabi's path breaks this loop by introducing remembrance of state. True zikr is not just repetition of words, it is turning your entire being, your emotions and actions, toward the divine. This is the art of substitution to silence the ego. You do not suppress it, you replace its fuel. By interrupting your automatic reactions, you cut off the ego's oxygen. Modern psychology calls this behavioral therapy. If you cannot change your thoughts, you must change your actions, and the mind will follow. Ibn Arabi says, "Bind the mind to remembrance through deeds." When you hold back a sharp word, you perform a secret dhikr. When you truly listen to your child, moving focus from your worries to their voice, you activate the divine name as Sami, the all-hearing. At that moment, the chatter of your worries fades, because the mind can only hold one master at a time. Ibn Arabi believed every soul carries a dominant divine name, a specific attribute of God that shines more strongly through them. For some, it is Al-Halim. For others, it is Al-Wadud, or As-Sami. Your name is your destiny. To find your silence, you must find your name by observing which acts of goodness bring the most profound stillness to your chest. You begin to identify your unique doorway to the divine. When you act in alignment with your name, the mind doesn't just grow quiet, it rests. Phase 3. The practice and the surrender. Once you discipline your behavior, practice the exercise of silence, sit in total stillness, do not repeat words. Instead, recall the moments you held your anger or showed mercy. Those were the moments God's names moved through you. Recall them in those moments your mind was already silent. This practice turns your memory from a warehouse of regrets into a sanctuary of encounters. As the master said, host the mind with the names of God, and the ego will eventually grow tired of its own voice. Finally, we reach Muraqabah, spiritual watchfulness. This is the moment you stop calculating. The mind only murmurs when it feels it is in control. The moment you realize you are a passenger on the ocean of Mura, divine will, the burden of calculation falls away. You are tired. Your mind has replayed the past and built fears of the future. But your heart was created for silence. Every trial was a whisper saying, "Come closer, stop fighting your thoughts. Step into the shade of God's mercy," for in the stillness of the heart, the truth is finally speaking, and the only word it is saying is love. Asterisk, understand this. The mind was never designed to be the master. It was designed to be the servant. In our modern world, we have put the servant on the throne and wondered why the kingdom is in chaos. The mind is a brilliant tool for solving problems, but it is a terrible master for the soul. The heart is the true king. But the king only speaks in silence. Ibn Arabi teaches that the noise of the mind is like a thick cloud covering the sun. The sun is always there, always warm, always shining. You don't have to create peace, you only have to remove the clouds of calculation and ego. Ibn Arabi invites us to look at our thoughts not as solid realities but as shadows. A shadow has no power of its own, it only exists because an object is blocking the light. The objects blocking the light of your heart are your attachments to your reputation, to your wealth, and to your past. When you worry about what others think of you, you are feeding a shadow. When you obsess over a mistake from 10 years ago, you are chasing a ghost. Ibn Arabi teaches that the moment you turn your face directly toward the sun of truth, the shadows fall behind. You do not have to fight the shadow, you only have to face the light. The silence you seek is already there, hidden behind the curtains of your own distractions too. Master the silence. You must recognize the 3 voices within you. The first is the nafs, al-amara, the commanding self. This is the loud, impulsive voice that demands instant gratification and fuels anger. It is the source of the coarsest noise. The second is the nafs al-lawama, the self-reproaching soul. This is the voice of guilt and constant self-judgment. While it feels spiritual to judge yourself, Ibn Arabi warns that even this is noise. It keeps you trapped in the ego. The goal is the nafs al-mutmainna, the soul at peace. This is the stage where the mind no longer argues with reality. It is the state of radiant contentment. To reach this, you must stop identifying with the first 2 voices. When a loud thought of anger or guilt arises, look at it and say, this is a voice, but it is not my voice. In that distance between you and the thought, silence is born. There is a story of Al-Khidr and Moses in the Quran that Ibn Arabi often references. It is a story about the mind's inability to understand the divine plan. Moses, representing the rational mind, kept questioning the events unfolding before him. He was full of why and how. This is exactly what our minds do. Every day we question our trials, our delays, and our pains. Each why is a brick in the wall of noise, but Al-Khidr represents the heart which sees the hidden wisdom. Ibn Arabi teaches us to practice intellectual silence. This means accepting that your mind is too small to see the whole map. When you stop demanding an explanation for every event in your life, your mind finally rests. You trade reasoning for beholding. When we say the names of God, we are not just making sounds. Ibn Arabi explains that each name has a specific resonance that vibrates through the cells of the body. If the mind is a chaotic river, the repetition of a divine name acts like a dam, but the secret is in there. Echo. After you finish your zikr, or after you finish a good deed, there is a moment of lingering stillness. This is the sacred echo. Most people rush to their next thought or their next task and miss it. Ibn Arabi tells us to stretch that echo. If you feel a second of peace after helping someone, stay in that second. Do not move, do not think. Let that peace expand until it fills your entire day. This is how a single moment of silence becomes a lifetime of tranquility. We often think of fasting as abstaining from food and water, but Ibn Arabi introduces us to the truest fast, the fasting of behavior and thought. He explains that just as the stomach hungers for food, the ego hungers for reaction. It craves the food of conflict, the sugar of praise, and the salt of resentment. To silence the mind, you must put the ego on a diet. When someone insults you and you choose not to retaliate, you are making the ego fast. When you feel the urge to complain about your life, but choose to find one hidden blessing instead, you are starving the nafs. Each time the ego goes hungry, the mind grows still. A hungry ego is a weak ego, and a weak ego cannot shout. This is the discipline of the spiritual warrior, to win the battle of silence by refusing to feed the war of words. Finally, we must understand the concept of nafas, al-Rahman, the breath of the merciful Ibn. Arabi taught that the entire universe is being breathed into existence. At every moment, your thoughts are like bubbles on the surface. Of this breath, they appear, they pop, and they vanish. The problem is that we try to grab the bubbles. We try to own them. We say, my anxiety, my anger, my failure. The ultimate secret to stopping the mind's chatter is to realize that you are the breath. Not the bubble. When you align your breath with the remembrance of the divine, you tap into the underlying silence of the universe. This is the silence that existed before the world was created, and it is the silence that remains when the world ends. Rest in that breath. Let the names of God flow through your actions like oxygen through your blood. When you do this, you are no longer a person trying to be silent. You are silence itself dressed in a human form. The heart in the wisdom of Ibn Arabi is not merely an organ that pumps blood. It is a vast cosmic mirror capable of reflecting the entire universe. When the mind is noisy, it is as if a storm is tossing the surface of a lake, making it impossible to see the bottom. But when the mind falls silent, the water becomes still and the depths are revealed. Modern science speaks of heart rate variability and the connection between the heart and the brain. But Ibn Arabi spoke of the heart as the true seat of intelligence. The mind is meant to be a translator for the heart, not its master. When you find yourself trapped in a loop of worry, you are living in a house with no windows. You are looking only at the walls of your own fears to break free. You must open the door of the heart through the act of presence. Living in the eternal now is the only cure for the chatter of the ego. The ego can only exist in the past or the future. It feeds on what has happened and what might happen. It cannot survive in the absolute present moment, because in the present moment there is only the divine presence. Ibn Arabi teaches us to be the child of the moment. This means treating every second as a direct gift from God, with no attachment to the second that passed, and no fear of the second that is coming. When you breathe consciously and anchor yourself in the now, the ego loses its grip. The noise stops because the ego has no time to speak. This is the ultimate freedom, to be present so fully that the past and future become irrelevant. Shadows. The journey inward is the longest journey a human will ever take, because it requires us to drop everything we thought we knew about ourselves. You have spent years building a personality, a reputation, and a list of achievements. Your mind is noisy because it is constantly trying to protect this false identity. Ibn Arabi calls this the veil of the self. To find silence, you must be willing to let that identity burn away in the fire of truth. You are not the person you see in the mirror. You are the light that is looking through the eyes. Silence is the sound of that light. When you stop defending your ego, the mind has nothing to fight for. It finally lays down its weapons and rests in the stillness of the soul. Insight, or kashf, is the fruit of this long silence. It is not a logical conclusion reached through thinking. It is a sudden opening of the eye of the heart. When the mind is quiet, you begin to see the world as it truly is, a magnificent display of divine names. You see the beauty in the leaf, the wisdom in the trial, and the mercy in the breath. This insight is only possible when the inner chatter ends. You cannot hear the symphony if you are shouting your own song too. Hear the music of existence. You must become the silence upon which the music is played. This is the secret of the Gnostic, to be empty of self and full of God. As we reach the final descent of this journey, we come to the realization that silence is not something we earn, but something we return to. It is our natural state. The noise was the anomaly. The noise was the sickness. Every act of kindness, every moment of patience, and every breath of remembrance was a step back toward this original Silence, do not be discouraged if your mind still whispers from time to time. Just smile at the whispers and return to the breath, return to the action, return to the name. You are a traveler who has finally seen the lights of home across the valley. Peace of the divine is a peace that passes all understanding. It does not depend on your bank account, your health, or your status. It depends only on your connection to the source of peace, Al-Salam, when you are anchored in Al-Salam, the loudest storm. In the world cannot shake the stillness of your heart. This is the legacy of Ibn Arabi. To live in the world, but not be of it, to act with the mind, but to dwell in the heart. You have reached the end of the words and the beginning of the reality. Take this silence with you and let it be your shield and your sanctuary forever and ever. The architecture of your life is built on the foundation of your attention. Where your attention goes, your energy flows, and where your energy flows, your mind follows. If you give your attention to the chaos of the world, your mind will be a chaotic storm. If you give your attention to the divine names, your mind will be a temple of light. Ibn Arabi teaches us that we are the architects of our own inner space. Most people live in a cluttered room filled with the junk of worldly desires and the dust of forgotten regrets. To build a space of stillness, you must first clear the room. This is the process of takliya, or emptying. The mind is not a violent act of suppression, it is a gentle act of letting go. Imagine you are holding a handful of sand. The tighter you squeeze, the more the sand escapes. But if you open your hand, the sand rests peacefully in your palm. Your thoughts are the sand. Acceptance is the open hand. When you stop trying to control every thought, they stop trying to control you. This is the secret of the masters, to live with an open hand and a quiet heart. You no longer chase the world and you no longer run from your fears. You simply stay in the center of the storm where everything is still. The language of the soul is not made of words or sentences. It is made of meanings and states. When the mind falls silent, the soul begins its true conversation with the divine. This conversation happens in the language of tears, in the language of awe, and in the language of gratitude. You may find yourself standing before a sunset or watching a child sleep, and suddenly the mind stops. Everything feels perfect and complete. In that moment, you are speaking asterisk. The legacy of a human being is not measured by what they leave behind in the world of matter, but by what they carry within them into the world of spirit. Ibn Arabi tells us that the heart is the only thing that survives the transition from this life to the next. If your heart is full of the noise of the ego, it will be heavy and dark. But if your heart is full of the silence of the divine, it will be light and radiant. This is why the discipline of the mind is the most important work you will ever do. You are building your eternal home with every thought you replace and every action you refine. The unseen world is not a place far away. It is a dimension that exists right here, right now, hidden behind the veil of your own distractions. When you quiet the mind, you are effectually thinning that veil. You begin to sense the presence of the angels, the flow of divine grace, and the interconnectedness of all living things. You realize that you are never truly alone, and that every struggle you faced was a programmed lesson designed to bring you to this very moment of realization. Silence is the frequency of the unseen world. And once you tune your heart to that frequency, the miracles of life begin to reveal themselves to you without effort. Imagine the entire universe as a grand symphony where every star, every atom, and every soul has a unique note to play. The ego is like a musician who refuses to follow the conductor and insists on playing its own loud, discordant tune. This is the source of all human suffering, but when the mind falls silent, the soul finally hears the melody of the great conductor. You begin to play your part in perfect harmony with the rest of creation. You no longer resist the flow of life, you become. The flow is the final union that Ibn Arabi speaks of. the state where the lover and the beloved become one. In this state there is no room for I or me, there is only he. The noise of the mind was the last barrier to this union. By silencing the chatter, you have stepped through the final door. You are no longer a drop of water, fearing the ocean. You have become the ocean itself. Every breath you take is now a prayer, every step you take is a pilgrimage, and every silence you keep is a conversation. With the divine you have returned to the source, you have found the secret, and you are finally home. To you who are listening to these words, know that your search for peace is over. The peace was never outside of you waiting to be found, it was always inside of you waiting to be remembered. The world will continue to be loud and the ego will continue to whisper, but you now have the tools to remain still in the center of it all. You are the master of your own silence and the guardian of your war. Own heart, take this stillness into your streets, into your homes, and into your workplaces. Let your quietness be a light for those who are lost in the noise of their own minds. Let your patience be a healing for those who are consumed by anger, and let your love be a sanctuary for those who have forgotten their own worth. Asterisk. Ibn Arabi teaches us that the human soul is made of light, and light by its very nature is silent. Light does not need to shout to be seen, it simply is. The noise of the mind is like a heavy smoke that hides the radiance of your soul when you practice. The secret dicker of action, you are not creating light, you are simply blowing away the smoke. Every time you choose kindness over pride or silence over gossip, you are allowing your natural radiance to shine through the cracks of your ego. This light is the same light that illuminates the heavens and the earth, and when you connect to it, you realize that you are part of something infinite and eternal. The mind often fears the light, because the light reveals the truth and the ego survives on illusions. The ego wants you to believe that you are separate, that you are small, and that you are in constant danger, but the light shows you that you are connected, that you are vast, and that you are always safe in the hands of the Creator. This realization is the ultimate silence. When you truly know that you are protected by the divine, you stop the frantic mental energy of self-preservation. You stop scanning the horizon for threats, and you start looking at the beauty in front of you. The soul that lives in the light is a soul that has found the end of all noise. The wisdom of Ibn Arabi is not meant to be kept in a book or listened to in a recording. It is meant to be lived in the market, in the street, and in the home. You must integrate this stillness into your daily habits until it becomes as natural as breathing. Start your day with a moment of absolute silence before the world demands your attention. Remind yourself of your dominant name and set the intention to reflect that attribute in everything you do throughout the day. When the pressure of life builds up and the mind starts to race, take a single conscious breath and return to the center. This is the practice of the spiritual traveler, to be in the world, but to keep the heart in the divine presence as you move through your day. Look for the silence in others. Everyone you meet is fighting a battle within their own mind, and many are lost in the noise of their own suffering. By staying silent and centered, you become a mirror for them. Your peace can help quiet their storm without you saying a single word. This is the highest form of service, to be a presence of peace in a world of chaos. You are now a carrier of the secret, and as you share this peace through your actions, you will find that your own silence grows deeper and more profound with every passing day. We have come to the edge of the words and the beginning of the infinite horizon. Ibn Arabi's journey was a journey toward the one and N. Your journey is the same. The mind has served its purpose by bringing you to this understanding. And now it is time for the mind to step aside and let the heart lead the way. The horizon is wide and the light is bright and the silence is calling. You whom you have nothing left to fear and nothing left to prove, you are a child of the divine, resting in the arms of mercy, and your final breath, and in every breath before it, remember that you were loved beyond measure. The noise was just a dream. But the silence is the reality. The struggle was just a shadow, but the peace is the substance. Go now with the blessings of the masters and the light of the truth. Let your life be your message, and let your silence be your strength. This is the completion of the secret. This is the end of the noise, and the beginning of the eternal song of the soul asterisk.